action fans everywhere. Once again, the eternal battle between the good guys and the bad guys is beginning. What side are you on? Which crowd do you applaud? Are you for the guys in the back room with the clouded cigar smoke? Or are you for those guys who come descending out of vast cloud of heaven bearing doves on each shoulder? Good evening, sport fans everywhere. I'm forever blowing. You all ready out there? You ready for it? Oh, what a great... Oh, there's something... You know, there's something... I just have to be perfectly frank with you. That there's something about hot summer weather that stirs some deep down, undiscovered, uncategorized, unmedical, defined gland somewhere inside of me that brings out... But I don't know whether I'm alone. I don't think so, because there's a wild look in the eye of many people. It's the summer madness. And do you feel it at all, Don? Well, then I'm sorry for you. Then you might as well just pack it in, because it's there. You know, speaking of summer madness here, I have a little note for attention all ex-GIs. Listen carefully here. We have a little note here that might be of some significance to you. I have a little thing here. It was sent to me by an official type spy, one of our spies out there, and sent me this official, it looks like an industrial newspaper, and down at the bottom it says here that Camp Crowder, for any of you, whoever at Camp Crowder, I think eventually all those things and all those little dreams that we all have finally do come true if we stick with it long enough, and we got enough pizzazz just to hang in there. Here it's a note about Camp Crowder. For any of you whoever were at Camp Crowder, it says the former military reservation, Camp Crowder military reservation, 5 miles south of friendly little Neosho, Missouri, has now been turned into the Water and Sewage Technical School. It's now on the site of the old 803rd. There you go, gang. Yes, indeed. Well, in a way, its function has never changed. It always had a little of that element to it. And I just thought that any of you ex-Camp Crowder types might be interested to know what's happening out at the old post. Look it up there. All right, there, Don. And by the way, hold that little stars. But no, I'll tell you what. Keep the second cut of the one on the fire turntable, because I'm going to use that. It'll be number. It's the one that I told you. Okay, I'll send it there. Just hold it there. Yeah, that's right. Just not yet, not now, when I give you the cue. All right? Okay. You know, it's funny when you take a look at a place name. It's kind of scary, the things that will create all those images in our life. You know, somebody today made a flat statement to me, which I will have to report to the audience, to the fellow sufferers out there. And this person said to me, "Wouldn't it be great if you could erase your life?" And she was serious, you know, she really meant it. She said, "Wouldn't it be great if you could erase your past? Just erase it like a big tape recorder." Now that's a very interesting philosophical question, you know. we could really have a deep, long, involved deepie on that subject, you know, whether or not you could exist, or whether or not it would be a good thing, whether or not you could conceivably tolerate it if you could somehow erase your past life. Now that's a very interesting question, you know, and immediately everybody is inclined to come up, you know, with a snap answer. Oh yeah, oh boy, I sure would do that. Or else they say, with a snap answer, oh no, of course not. Well, now that question is not so easily answered. Can you imagine, though, what kind of a person would suddenly develop? Now let's think about it from the standpoint of hey, that would make a great basis for a science fiction story. No, well, I'm not going to write it. I don't write science fiction. But it would make a great basis of a science fiction story if a guy working in some laboratory somewhere came up with some kind of an electronic device or chemical device, something that would enable you, if you wanted to, it would enable you to submit yourself to this machine, and it would erase effectively your past life. Now, it wouldn't erase any knowledge you have. In other words, if you learn to be an engineer or if you've learned how to read. I don't mean erase all the technical skills that you've amassed, but erase your life, which is a separate thing. You know, you can go for 9 years to medical school and you can absorb all this medical technique, you see, but your life is being lived outside of that. Your real life. You know, you walk around, you hit people, you yell, you get into trouble, you lose everything you got at the races and all that scene. That's your life, you know, on one side. The rest of it is the technical skill that you have absorbed in becoming an operating human being. Now, my question is this. Wouldn't it be interesting if somebody were to contrive a machine that could effectively erase from your memory all of the life that you have lived, except the technical skills that you've learned? In other words, at the age of 25, we'll say, they plug you in, they turn the thing on, the lights light, the thing hums, and there's a faint tingling sensation, and then you have a brief paroxysm of muscle leapings, and they have to put cold compresses on your head for half an hour, and they give you a shot to bring you to, and then you arrive back on this plane, on this planet. You arrive a totally erased person, totally erased. Now, that's not quite the same as a man suffering amnesia, you see, because amnesia is a problem that has other things going for it. This is a way of erasing your life. Now, I wonder what kind of person this would create. What kind of a you know, and I wonder another thing. This is even a more interesting question to me. Given this reality, see, I'm sure that most people will say, come on, I wouldn't do it. Or they will say, yeah, wow, man, because it's impossible. You see, they know secretly, anybody who comes up with a snap answer like that secretly knows that this isn't going to happen. He totally knows this. So it's easy to come up with an answer like that. What if tomorrow morning there was an ad in the New York Times, a full page, back page, that says, tired of your rotten life? Does your past bug you? Are you spending all your time on a couch? Do you find yourself breaking at the tears when you're hiding behind the water cooler at the office without any reason for doing this? Well, we are now offering a system absolutely guaranteed, totally tested, tried and true. For $1,000, you can erase your entire past life. I wonder how many people would show up. And by the way, here's the sad fact of it. If they did erase the past life, it would not... that most people, I'm sure, when they think of an idea of erasing their past life, they think of emerging a new person. They think of suddenly, now they're new. That's a new person now. I'm sorry. You would be the same klutz you always were, and I have a suspicion you might be doomed to repeat all the stuff, which ultimately you paid $1,000 to erase. You'd start all over again, the whole scene. You'd start... there's that idea. Then there's another thought, of course, that goes on and on. You know that this philosophical concept has, from time to time, popped up in the writings of philosophers. That when a man, in fact, there is one philosopher who made the statement that a man is better off the day he dies than the day he was born. Now wait a minute. Think about that for a minute. Don't be inclined to just whip up a snap answer. Oh, what do you mean? What is this cockamamie talk? No, there is this is what's called philosophy, of course. that's not something that everybody studies. But all these abstract ideas floating in air there are the things which ultimately, literally do bug us on a very low, basic plane. I think this is one of the lures that most people find in communism. One of the subtle little lures. They think that if somehow there were laws passed and everybody was now arbitrarily equal, and everybody would share everything equal, that they then would be as good as everybody else. This is a very interesting. I think one of the deep psychological lures for something like totalitarianism. This is one of the things I found in the Army, too, and I don't want to go back. This is not an Army night, but it's an interesting thing that you find in the Army, that many guys like the Army because the Army gives them a sense of anonymity. if the guy spends all his time in Griffith, Indiana, and he's the tall, skinny guy with pimples and hangs around in front of the pool room, and he hasn't had a date in 17 years, and nobody, cares one way or the other, all of a sudden he's got this brown suit on, he's with 16 million other guys, and he has no responsibility. He can always feel that the system is against him, else he would be a first sergeant. The system is against him, or else he would have made first lieutenant. There's a nice cop-out, a lot of cop-outs in the Army. It's a great cop-out world. Speaking of cop-outs, the drive towards anonymity, people talk about conformity. I don't think these words have any meaning any longer. I don't think that people are conforming when they're driving towards what is generally called in writing conformism. I think they're driving towards something subtler than that, and that is anonymity. We always talk about how people today, everybody is bugged because he's not an individual, and that everybody is having trouble establishing his identity. I think one of the real things that people are afraid of is doing exactly that, establishing an identity, or becoming not a mass man, unit in this fantastic thing, but becoming an individual. That's a very scary thing because that's dangerous, When you're an individual, you got to look out. There's a lot of problems going with being an individual. We've always been a herd animal anyway, and being a herd animal has had its value. The first 16 guys that gathered together in a cave, it was quite obvious that one or two of them were much more able to fend with the jungle than the other 12. And so it was certainly to the benefit of the other 12 if somehow they could convince the other 2 that we all ought to be together in this thing. So ultimately, I suspect that the newsroom, is John Wingate ready? Okay, John, let's hear what's happening out there on the election front.
John Wingate, WOR Radio News, the primary election results we cover. Let's go to headquarters of Justice Samuel Silverman, who is Robert Kennedy's man for a Manhattan surrogate Democratic nomination. Lester Smith, what's the word?
We're finding an upswing in the mood of optimism here at Silverman headquarters. Justice Silverman has reportedly taken a number of Manhattan districts in the Washington Heights area, which he was not expected to win. In addition, reports continue to come in that the vote in the reform areas has run substantially ahead of that in other parts of the city. And, of course, it is in those reform areas where Justice Silverman presumably would have his greatest support. One member of the Silverman staff said just a short time ago that if the vote runs between 100 and 110,000, it'll still be a very tough, close race. On the other hand, he felt very strongly that a vote of over 110,000 votes would virtually assure a Silverman victory. The Silverman staff at the moment is making no claims, but they are heartened by a number of developments, such as the Washington Heights turnout and the voting in the reform districts. Lester Smith reporting. Back now to John Wingate in the news.
And apropos of your report, Lester, we understand that one network computer has just about predicted a Silverman victory. I'll only add that this was the same network computer that made a mistake the last election night and spent 6 hours backtracking all over the place. We'll stay with your report, and the computers can stay with themselves. But there looks to be a strong trend for Samuel Silverman, State Supreme Court Justice, who is Robert Kennedy's man and the Reform Democrats' man for Democratic nomination for Manhattan surrogate. His opponent, of course, is Arthur G. Klein, who's an old line Democrat, also a State Supreme Court Justice. All along, the Kennedy forces have charged corruption and a great gravy pool operating there in the surrogate system. That's where you file your probate when you die in New York. Now, to give you the other side of the story, the Klein forces and the regular Democrats have charged interference by Robert Kennedy. Much of the Klein campaign literature has said that Kennedy is a man of what they call ruthless ambition. And only last evening, Justice Arthur Klein at a dinner said, I quote, "Why, he'd cut the throat of my dear friend Hubert Humphrey," end quote. But at the moment, based on WOR's Lester Smith's report, Samuel Silverman seems to be running strong. We'll make no predictions. We do have this. Steve Deronian, conservative-minded Republican who doesn't like to appear to be so conservative, is in Nassau County, and he goes in by a better than 2-1 sweep over William J. Casey. With most of the votes in, Deronian, making his comeback, is in Nassau County. There are only 2 districts in Oyster Bay unreported, so Steve Duronian has it there, and WOR News declares him the winner. We don't make predictions, we just declare the winner when he's in. Stay tuned to 710 on your dial for complete coverage of the important primary, with the focus being here and nationally on that really fierce battle for Manhattan's surrogate Democratic nomination. Does Robert Kennedy's man go in, and do the old-line Democrats go out? That we'll know between now and, say, 1 o'clock this morning. John Wingate here. Let's go back to Gene Shepard.
Well, thank you, old John, and this is WOR AM and FM here in New York. Oh, one of the funniest unconscious. To me, elections generally are they're as a matter of fact, if you look at them one way, they're far funnier than anything W.C. Fields ever did. And the idea of one politician calling another politician ambitious somehow has elements of high comedy to me. I mean, isn't it? To me, it would seem to me that to define a politician is to define a man who's ambitious. I mean, it takes a certain amount of ambition just to go out there and say, "Vote for me, friends. You know, I'm great. Put me in, and it'll all be great." I wonder how it. You know, speaking of politicians and elections, I just thought while listening to this, I just thought of another plot for a science fiction movie. Now, perhaps, or it would even be better as a short story. You're probably aware today that most elections are really created by the news media. That people walk around the streets. You know, there's just a general ho-hum atmosphere. You know, ho-hum. You know, especially when it's something like a primary or something like. But the news mediums, they go ape over them. I tell you, they're fantastic. It's just, you just wouldn't believe it. They run around and they get their little mobile cars out, and everybody gets his tape recorders out. And there's a whole big shlemuha and a big magilla, and they all go rushing out to the various headquarters. Well, I could just see this now. There's signs all over. You know, it says vote for Watanabe. You know, and vote for Charlemagne the Elder. Big sign over here says vote for Ethelred the Bald, and they're all running. So it's a fantastic election going on. And all the newsmen are on edge. You know, boy, they're reading on top of it. As a matter of fact, most newsmen today secretly will concede that it's not the politicians that are running, it's them. And the big argument is whether Walter Cronkite on any given night did better than David Brinkley. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people are bugged by computers, which always comes up during the election, is that the computers aren't as cute as Huntley. That when they say, "We now take you to RCA computer number 722 GT," they switch, and there's that black panel there with a lot of meters, and the thing you keep going, and it's not very cute. And IBM and NCR and these people are beginning to take moves now, which I think could be revolutionary in the whole man-machine relationship. And they're making, instead of making man in the image of the machine, which for a long time they tried to do, now they're trying to make the machine in the image of man. And have you gone past any of the showrooms where they're showing the new computers? Let me tell you, it's pretty hard to tell a crowd of computers in a window there where it says for sale from a gang of Rotary Club members who are meeting in Teaneck to celebrate the election of their new vice president. No, they're so cute you can't resist them. And ultimately, they will put sex appeal in the computers too, and that's going to be the day when this poor battered little live reporter says, "And now we switch you to," and of course the numbers are, that goes against them too. The idea of naming a computer with a number is never going to make it very loved. If David and if Huntley and Brinkley and Kunkley, or whatever their names are, David and Chet, had numbers like 1722 and 3806. I don't think they would have achieved what they have achieved, and general lovability, and also general public reliance upon whatever it is they say. Now, if you can name your computer, say Davy, we now take you to Davy over in room 14. Come in, Davy, please. And out comes this very cute computer. It winks a little bit. The lights wink. And it hums. It hums. Instead of that, the hum they got, it's going da 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 dee la da 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 dee. And as the and it chuckles once in a while when the data is fed into it. I think that's what we would like, a machine to chuckle a little bit. Either that or it snorts derisively. And so, of course, what it's snorting at is a ridiculous man voting for this klutz, who's obviously winning, see. So in comes all the data, see, and the machine is going, and they read it down the bottom, says, and Charlie Watanabe is now leading his opponent by 68,000 votes to 220, and then they switch away, see, and then they take you to a left wing. I think you're going to have to wind up eventually, really, with computers that are oriented left wing, right wing, middle ground. Then there will be the Olympian computer that does nothing, it doesn't even deal with such basic mundane issues as left and right, but talks about the overall meaning to mankind of tonight's big election. And here's, you want to hear the story, my idea for a basic plot? Okay. It's an election set in the future, the near future, see, and all the radio reporters have gotten all their little machines already, the tapes. They've got 16 million miles of tape all set. We've got the lines in, and all the radio stations are there. Did you notice that last time, I think for the first time, the candidate was totally inundated by reporters? Do you remember when Lindsay was elected? You remember that scene? Now, come on, try to use what little memory you've got left in the 20s and try to turn back to those ancient days of the first of the year when Lindsay was elected. That's a long time ago, I know, for you to remember in this hard-hitting, day-by-day, fantastic world. But if you recall the scene, Lindsay came down into the ballroom or wherever it was, and here there were 48 million guys. You couldn't see anything. All of them, and microphones and numbers. They had call letters, the whole thing. And you could see a foot once in a while stick out, or a hand waving. And occasionally you'd hear a gasp for water or something. You remember that scene? And there were photographers and everything. So you began to see, and they would not move either. That was the whole point. He kept saying, move aside. Move, what do you mean? You're only the candidate. Stop it. I'm Gabe. I'm Pressman. You don't tell Gabe. I'm John Wigan. What do you mean, move aside? And so ultimately, it was the candidate who had to move aside. You remember he says he had to give up, and he went back. You notice none of the reporters left, though, see, because they knew what an election is about. It's about ratings. And that's about a lot of other things. See, so here's what I propose as a plot. My show is called the Day It Happened, or The Day the Bronx Didn't Report In. And here they're all set, and they say the election will be over at 10 o'clock, or 5 o'clock, or 6 o'clock. And all the radio channels, all the TV channels immediately switch to their computers, and they switch to the guys that are out there in the remote unit. And the guy sitting back in the studio says, now, for the first returns of the election, we're always first, we're right, we're on top of it. Here we take you to Charlie Watanabe, who is now on the headquarters floor of Charlemagne III. And it looks like Charlemagne III, the signs are now beginning to be quite plain that this is going to be a very close election. Take it away, Charlie. And here's the mobile unit. Charlie, Watanabe reporting here. And we're here for 4.5 minutes now. And there's a little confusion on the floor, ladies and gentlemen. A little confusion on the floor. No reports have yet come in. No one has voted yet in Manhattan. And so with not much we can say here, the candidate is resting. We now switch you back to Central Headquarters. Take it away, Huntley. Crinkling, chinkling. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we just come from Ethelred the Reddy's headquarters. We just called them on the phone, and apparently no one voted in that precinct over there. And we will now take you, what do you mean in the control room? Nothing is happening yet at the Hunrath the Ball's headquarters? I see. And they stand around, and it turns out that not one single person has voted. No returns. It was the day, finally, that the news media and the candidates and the parties have all floated out to sea, all by themselves, and left poor, groveling mankind far behind. That no longer does it care, no longer does it even bother. And one little cheap jack channel way down at the end, one little channel who was so cheap that it couldn't buy lines to election headquarters, is running an old Priscilla Lane movie. And the rating over there is 16,942. It was the day that give me a little Stars and Stripes there, will you please? Stars and Stripes, Don? Good. We salute that day. Oh, yeah. The day that it happened was brought to you in widescreen erotic color. Produced by George L. Washington. Directed by Thomas Aquinas Jefferson. Scenic design by Fred Socrates. This is a Vox Populi Neo Nisi Bonum production. Brought to you through the courtesy of the Non-Compass Metis production staff. Stay tuned for further bulletins on the hour, every hour, 24 hours a day, 465 days a year. We're the only station that gives you 100 extra days. And 14,000 extra bulletins, therefore. A man must be in touch with his world to understand his world. Isn't that right, gang? Oh, you're so right, gang. Remember one thing, the gang is always right. Like they say, 50 million Frenchmen can't be wrong. Oh, boy. And certainly 200 million Americans can't be. There's 4 times as many Americans as Frenchmen. Must be 4 times righter. Mind if I sit in with you guys? All right, that's enough. We got I guess we covered the election. Let's see, we've got a couple of news notes here and a couple of whoopies. Will you hit the whoopee button, please, Donald?
Dear Americans, I'm here to tell you about honor. Many years ago, the people of Chinzano decided that Italian grapes were fine for Chinzano Sweet Vermouth, but just not dry enough for Chinzano Dry Vermouth. They insisted that Chinzano French Dry Vermouth would make a drink taste nice, very nice. For being born Italian and letting a Frenchman make their dry vermouth, the people of Chinzano were bitten by their dogs, fed mushy spaghetti by their wives, and treated not very good. But in their poor, honorable hearts, they knew that Chinzano French Dry Vermouth was the best dry vermouth. My American friends, after all that trouble, what do you know about Chinzano, huh? That we make ashtrays. Americans, you're some friends.
Imported by Shefflin & Co., New York.
Very good, very good. That was well done. Let's see, we have Rover. No, you just hang in there. I've got a couple of others here. We've got Rover, the Rover 2000 TC. By the way, have any of you seen the movie Born Free? I saw it, 3 months ago in a preview. And that is one of the eeriest movies I've ever seen from a technical standpoint. I'm not talking about eerie in any other than that. It's hard to believe that such a movie could have been made. No, really. Did you read the book Born Free, one of the Lioness? And they have created this thing, and I couldn't believe it. I mean, I really could not believe that you could create a movie on the premise of a lion growing up. And incidentally, the reason I bring that up at this point is that one of the primary elements in this movie is a car. And you see this car all over. Every place you look in the movie, there's this car going over the veldt, going through the jungle, going down roads in Africa. If you want to see pictures of how Africa really looks, as opposed to the old Tarzan idea of what Africa looks like, this is a superb way to do it. But the car is a Land Rover. which, if you get out of the urban areas of America, if you get to places like Nigeria or India, or places like, well, I saw a whole slew of them, for example, in the Negev Desert. They're used in the desert a lot. The Land Rover is one of the stars of this movie, and in the entire movie is this lion sleeping on top of the Land Rover as they go whistling over the veldt. And it incidentally adds a great deal to the picture. There's a strange kind of a reality to the car. The car becomes a character. And this is the Land Rover that we've been talking about. They're the same people that make the Rover 2000. And I don't know, there's a funny thing about cars and people when you have to depend on them. I suppose people in New York, I think that most writers, most guys live in urban areas. The commercial is long since over, okay? That most people who live, now I've really wondered about that machine-man relationship a great deal. I've thought about it. And I know a lot of my friends who live right here in Midtown Manhattan are very, they're very put down about the automobile. To them, the automobile is a ridiculous, silly crotch of the people. What do you mean? It's a ridiculous thing. Who needs a car? Well, of course, he says this because he lives on 14th Street. And, who needs a car when you live in the center of the universe? I mean, who needs to go anyplace? Now, that's a valid question. When an automobile really is a drag on a person, as it is quite often here in New York City, unless you rush out and get a cab and jump in and give the guy a buck and forget the car the minute afterwards. It's purely utilitarian in New York City. And I wonder how many people know the peculiar interrelationship that exists between the machine and man, where the man depends so fantastically on the machine that his life is literally almost non-existent in some areas without that machine, without that car. That thing that liberates him. It's like a liberator, It liberates him from, and I think that the real essence of freedom to me is mobility. To be able to move. Now, mobility has a lot of philosophical connotations. To be able to move, to be mobile politically. In other words, to be able to be free to think politically. That's a kind of mobility. To be able to move bodily. This is mobility and freedom too. And to me, it's fascinating to see how many countries are called free, and yet none of their people can get out of them. They can't get out of those countries at all. And yet, the apologists for these countries will call them free countries. And it doesn't seem to me to be, it's one of the great paradoxes. It's kind of a self-defeating thing. And yet, getting back to the car, the thing that the automobile does to many people is it gives them that kind of mobility. The kind of mobility that is, because I think freedom is a many-faceted thing. You should not only have freedom of your mind, you should also have it of your body. And we often fail to realize that the bodily side of freedom is very important too, and in many cases as important as the philosophical freedom. And so the car in some countries, some areas, like if you're living way out in the Great Plains of Kansas, have you ever been entrapped by space? Well, if you've ever been entrapped by sheer physical geography and space, you will recognize what that term freedom means related to a vehicle, wheels, that can give you precedence over and give you victory over that fantastic prison of space. You can be imprisoned just as much by wide areas as you can by a small circumcised room with bars. That's hard to believe, but I'll tell you, you know this when you've wandered across the Great Plains. You know this when you've spent any time in places like the great vast wastes of certain parts of Missouri and Oklahoma, and you go to a place like Israel, which I just got back from, and you recognize that the automobile, I mean, it's as much as a necessity really as shoes or a drink of water. Else the modern man would go out of his skull completely. I mean, he could not accept being totally circumscribed by this vast globe, kept down and held in. And so when you see a movie, say for example like Born Free, you recognize that relationship of man and machine, where you can see that this machine gives them the freedom to move over this wilderness. And at the same time, it has become part of the wilderness. It's not a jewel or a bauble or a toy. Have you ever seen a farmer in Michigan, for example, with his, and I have many times, a farmer in Michigan with his Model A, or with his 1947 Ford station wagon? It's totally, it's just completely covered with dust, this yellow dust, which has never once been washed off. The guy probably got the car secondhand in 1950, and since that time it has not been washed down once except by heavy rains. And you recognize that this thing is not a luxury. It's not a toy. This thing is as important to his life, let's say, as the well is that pumps the water up out of the ground. And he treats it that way. They don't. There's no sense of polishing it and getting it out and parking it in front of the farm, making sure, it's just in and out of this thing and banging in and out. And this is part of that fascinating machine-man relationship, which is not all entirely negative. Hey, we got a couple more. Speaking of this, we've got a couple more whoopies. Let's see. You've got hit the button, Don.
Have you ever sat there and just daydreamed with your feet up, and you got a can of beer in your hand, and you're thinking of all the really great things that could happen to you? Like, the secretary chases you around, your secretary, this fantastic secretary, and corners you on a couch. You know what would happen? You'd get fired. That's right. Oh, yes. Have you ever thought, you go to the psychiatrist there, and he's got this fantastic wife, and the next thing you know, you've got her in a ripple bath. You know what would happen? He'd have you committed. Sorehead. If you'd like to see a guy that gets into all these hang-ups, it's Sean Connery, and it's in A Fine Madness. I would suggest you better get down and see this one. It's A Fine Madness in Technicolor. And, oh, by the way, it'll teach you a lesson or two. Stay away from psychiatrist wives.
It starts tomorrow at RKO 58th, RKO 23rd, and the Forum 47th Street Theater. Who was that slob? Speaking of that slob, hit the button there. George, that's all you got? Oh, we've got one more. Wohlmuth. Some guy sent me, now I don't know anything about this. Now, don't ask me. Now, wait. Let's stop right here before we go any further. Some guy sent me a photostat of a telegram he got that he won a suit. I don't know anything about it from Wohlmuth. He says, at last I'm Wohlmuth on a yard wide now. And he says, I got this. Did you have anything to do with it? No, I did not. I know nothing about that. However, we do know about Wohlmuth suits. And here's their note. It says, right now, for as little as $56, you can get yourself a tropical weight summer suit made to your measure with your choice of styling details, if you like those big, broad prison stripes, or if you like those big fan wing type lapels, that go all the way out around your shoulder, and if you get a good run, you can take right off the ground. They'll do it for you. Wohlmuth's giant summer sale. Clothes made to your exact measure for as low as 56 simoleons. Okay? Wohlmuth. 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 America's largest tailors. Right? That's a great phrase you don't hear anymore. Simoleon. I heard a guy today say something. I'm afraid that our language is not as colorful as it used to be. It is not. I am sitting in an outdoor cafe down in the village, see, and this is about 8 o'clock tonight. And I'm down there, and it's outdoors. I got my sandals on. I got my angry look on, the whole scene of the hot air. Oh, what a life, I think New York is getting to be, I hate to say this, it's very hip today to put New York down. But seriously, I think New York is getting to be vaguely civilized now. No, it is showing signs that the more and more you can sit out, outdoor cafes, you can sit out and eat without 6 big Airedales coming over and chomping down on your cheeseburger, or guys looking over your shoulder while you're eating because they never saw anybody eat outside before. They just come from Christenberry, Iowa, where nobody ever eats outside. You hide in the closet when you eat out there, and they're amazed with people sitting out there and eating. And so it's getting a little bit more civilized. And I'm sitting in this outdoor cafe, and the guy at the next table, and he's scoffing away, he's pushing the stuff down his trap. And all of a sudden, these two chicks go by, and wow, they go by. He turns around, and you can see the ketchup dripping from his chin. And he says, "Oh wow, oh boy, look at them bimbos." Boy, what a couple of bimbos. And I'm sitting there quietly scoffing my stuffed Russian beluga salmon whoopies or whatever it is I was eating, and I thought to myself, boy, that's a great phrase. I haven't heard that phrase. That's the kind of thing my old man used to say. Boy, my old man used to say, what a couple of tootsies, wow. And I used to, and my mother used to say, now stop, the kids are watching. Shh, stop it, will you? And he's looking out of the... Have you ever seen the driver drive down the street right in the middle of the outer drive and look out of the back window of his car? Well, that was my old man's, and he kept saying, what a couple of bimbos, wow! Well, I think this is a great phrase, bimbo, tootsie. I like the, the guy goes up and he says, there'll be 2 Somalians on number 7 of the 3rd, okay? 2 Somalians, 2 frog skins. I mean, that's so much more colorful than bread. Bread. I like the. Can you think of any other things that they used to that you've heard applied to money? 2 bananas. That'll be 2 bananas, Dad. Let me see what else. 2 bucks, 2 Somalians, 2 frog skins. Gee whiz. Hi, any bimbos out there? Hey, is there a real bimbo out there listening right now? Is there a bimbo? I'd like to hear from somebody who admits that they're a bimbo and knows that you're a bimbo. If you, give us a call here. I'd like to put that, do we have time for a bimbo call? Quick. Any bimbos out there? Hey? Any tootsies out there? Well, the old man used to alternate with, oh, boy, did you see them 2 broads? Wow. That, he would say. Or, oh, look at them tootsies. Hey, wow. And my mother's sitting there, of course. She's an ex-tootsie. She realizes that there must have been one time when she went past and he says to his friend Charlie, hey, look at that tootsie. Holy smokes, look at that bimbo. And she says, now, here, the kids are going to be hearing that. And I can remember one time sitting back and, hiding by the fence, and I'm with Bruner, and past goes Esther Jane Albury and Dawn Strickland. I say, hey, Bruner, look at them 2 tootsies, wow. What a couple of bimbos. Picked it up from the old man. You mean a bimbo is calling? Come on there. Ain't no bimbos listening tonight.